Welcome. If the audience here listens to this video with an open heart and open ears in these confusing yet fascinating times, I feel as if they will gain a lot of wisdom and correct wisdom to breathe deeper and live freer. Let me start with something most people your age don't hear nearly enough. You've done better than you think. You spent decades working, raising families, solving problems, showing up when life didn't give you a choice. And now you're in a chapter that nobody prepares you for. The chapter where the world suddenly stops asking for your time, your effort, and your strength, yet expects you to magically know how to live differently. Retirement isn't just a financial shift, it's emotional, it's identity changing. It's a transition from being needed every day to finally having space, and sometimes that space feels peaceful, and sometimes it feels unfamiliar. So if you're listening to this, understand something simple and true. You've earned the right to slow down. You've earned the right to feel safe. You've earned the right to protect what you built, not gamble it. And no, you don't need millions to live well. You don't need to chase anything anymore. You don't need to compare yourself to anyone online who pretends to have their life together. If you've got $250,000 saved or even close to it, that puts you ahead of the majority of retirees in the country. But more importantly, it means you spent years choosing responsibility over impulse. It means you knew how to plan when many people your age didn't. It means you lived with discipline even when it wasn't comfortable. That deserves respect, that deserves confidence, that deserves peace. This video isn't about making you feel behind, it's about helping you feel prepared. It's about giving you the clarity to enjoy the rest of your life without fear, confusion, or pressure to do more. You've already lived through recessions, inflation storms, layoffs, market crashes, and good years and bad years. You've seen enough to know that wealth isn't measured by the size of your pile, but by how calm you feel when life gets uncertain. So take a deep breath. You're not late, you're not lost, you're not starting from zero. You're stepping into a chapter where wisdom matters more than speed, and control matters more than growth. And now let's talk about how to use the money you've saved carefully, peacefully, and in a way that serves you for the rest of your life. People misunderstand $250,000. They treat it like pocket change in a world obsessed with millionaires. But for a retiree, $250K is not a small number. It's the line between living with constant tension and living with steady breath. It's not wealth in the flashy sense, but it is leverage in the quiet sense. And quiet leverage matters more at your age than any headline figure. Most older people don't fail financially because they didn't make enough. They fail because they never learned to think correctly about what they made. $250,000 won't park a yacht at your dock, but it will pay for emergencies without panic. It will let you sleep better than people who earn 3 times as much but spend 4 times as fast. It gives you something most younger people never feel: margin. The biggest mistake retirees make is comparing their savings upward. They look at neighbors with bigger homes, friends who retired with more, children who seem more successful, and every upward comparison steals a little more peace. Comparison is a thief that robs you quietly. You don't notice it until the joy is gone. Let me tell you a truth I've earned over 9 decades. The moment you stop comparing your life to someone else's, your money becomes enough. Enough isn't a number, it's a decision. And retirees who embrace that decision live longer, happier, calmer lives. The second reality retirees must face is this: your $250K is not a trophy, it's a tool. It doesn't mean you won, it means you built a cushion strong enough to support a simpler, steadier life. You don't measure a tool by how impressive it looks, you measure it by how useful it is. Your savings should reduce stress, not invite ego. I've seen people retire with millions and spend every day worried. I've seen people retire with a fraction of that and live beautifully. The difference wasn't the balance, it was the mindset. The people who do well in retirement have one habit in common: they stop pretending their life is a contest. Retirement is not a race. You're not scoring points. You're not performing anymore. You're maintaining stability. People who chase status into old age burn through their savings like fuel. People who seek comfort, simplicity, and clarity make their savings last longer than they ever imagined. Your $250K can last you years, decades even, if you use it correctly. It can be the buffer that lets you enjoy your mornings without dread. It can be the difference between calling a repairman calmly and calling them with fear. It can turn unexpected problems into inconveniences instead of crises. but only if you treat it with respect. The retirees who lose money fastest are the ones who treat their savings like a victory to celebrate rather than a foundation to protect. They try to live like they're still earning. They try to match lifestyles they can no longer afford. They try to impress people whose admiration doesn't matter. Your money is not a message, it's a mechanism that buys peace, time, and less stress. You don't need more, you need enough. And you already have enough. If you stop comparing and start thinking like someone whose goal is calm, not applause. The truth is simple. $250K won't make you rich, but if you're disciplined, it will keep you safe. And safety at your age is worth far more than another zero. Once you retire, the rules of money change completely. In your working years, mistakes were expensive. In retirement, they become irreversible. This is the part people don't want to hear, but it's the truth. Older generations understand better than anyone. You don't get a second chance at protecting your first pile. Your first job isn't to grow your $250K, it's to make sure it doesn't evaporate. Growth is optional. Protection is mandatory. The reason is simple. A bad investment at 35 is a lesson. A bad investment at 65 is a consequence. There's no rebuilding phase waiting for you. No extra decades to recover. No bonus round. The retirees who live peacefully aren't the ones who doubled their savings. They're the ones who avoided the disaster that knocks years off a comfortable life. People think risk disappears when you get older. It doesn't. It multiplies. The stock market becomes riskier when you're pulling money out of it, not adding money in. Medical issues appear when it's least convenient. Emergencies show up faster than you can plan for them. The people who think retirement is a time for bold bets are usually the ones who end up asking their children for help. Defense is where real financial wisdom lives, not in chasing returns, not in gambling with just a little, not in trying to impress anyone. Defense is boring, and boring is exactly what your money needs at your age. That leads to the second lesson. You must ignore confident amateurs. Retirees are the #1 target of bad advice. Always have been, always will be. Why? Because scammers and salesmen know something you don't realize. Your money is sitting still, and sitting money attracts hunters. You'll hear offers that sound polished. You'll meet people who sound intelligent. You'll get invited into opportunities that feel exclusive, and every one of them will come wrapped in urgency. If you wait, you'll miss out. If you act now, you'll secure your future. If you trust me, I'll handle the rest. Let me translate those phrases for you. I want your money before you have time to think. If someone is more excited about your savings than you are, that is not a good sign. That is a red flag. The best investments for retirees are slow, predictable, and uninteresting. If you can explain it to a 10-year-old in one sentence, it is probably safe. If you need charts, excitement, and complicated diagrams to justify it, run. The people who end up bankrupt in retirement didn't gamble boldly. They trusted the wrong people confidently. Confidence is not competence. Enthusiasm is not expertise. And a smile is not a safety net. Let me tell you a story I've seen repeated thousands of times. A retiree with $250K hears about a promising new investment. They dip in because the salesman sounds smart. The investment goes sour. They lose 30%, then 40%, then half. They panic. They pull out at the worst moment. And the next decade of their life is spent recovering from the one decision they didn't need to make. I've watched this play out more times than I can count. Retirement is not the time to chase excitement. It's the time to preserve your footing so the years ahead feel stable, not stressful. Your $250K is not bait. Don't let anyone treat it like it is. Your responsibility now is simple. Protect what you have, because what you have is enough to keep you safe, but not enough to survive unnecessary losses. A retiree who guards their principal lives longer, sleeps better, and avoids the financial chaos that devastates families. You don't need brilliance. You need boundaries. You don't need big returns. You need consistent ones. You don't need to be clever. You need to ignore clever people. Protect the principal, and the principal will protect you. People with $250,000 in retirement usually make the same mistake. They think the money has to perform miracles. They think it must double, triple, or rescue every past financial decision. But $250K doesn't need to perform magic. It only needs to behave. The moment you stop demanding fireworks from your savings, your entire perspective changes. You stop panicking. You stop comparing. You stop chasing returns that were never meant for your stage of life. The people who destroy their retirement are the ones who believe they're one big move away from feeling secure. So they look for excitement. They hunt for stories. They listen to the loudest voice in the room instead of the calmest one. They forget that the world is full of investments designed to attract attention, not preserve wealth. The salesman makes money on excitement. You make money on patience. That simple separation explains half of the financial tragedies people walk into. At this age, slow growth isn't a weakness, it's a shield. A steady 5-7% return year after year looks boring to someone who's 30. But when you're retired, that slow drip becomes a quiet engine. It lets your money work without demanding your nerves. You don't need perfection. You don't need precision. You don't need a genius strategy. You need something durable, something predictable, something that won't disappear because a stranger online got overconfident. The second mistake retirees make is touching their money too often, checking their accounts like it's a newborn child, reacting to every red day, every headline, every rumor. The market breathes. It doesn't march in a straight line, but people panic every time it exhales. And panic is expensive, not because it feels bad, but because it makes you act. Every unnecessary adjustment slows compounding. Every little emotional decision trims a branch off your money tree. The truth is, your savings don't grow when you're clever. They grow when you're quiet. Compounding is not a race, it's a rhythm. It rewards people who can sit still, ignore noise, and let time do its job. Most retirees don't fail because of bad investments. They fail because they interrupt good ones. They jump in, jump out, change strategies, adjust allocations, chase rumors, flee headlines, all because they never learn the value of staying put. Wealth at this age is less about returns and more about temperament. You don't need to outsmart the market, you just need to outlast your impulses. The less you touch your portfolio, the better it behaves. The calmer you are, the stronger it becomes. A retiree who sleeps through volatility will always be richer than the retiree who tries to manage every fluctuation. One trusts the process, the other fights it. One compounds, the other interrupts. If you want your $250K to work quietly, give it quiet, give it stability, give it time, let it grow in peace instead of turmoil. Good investing at this stage of life is not dramatic and it's not thrilling. It's disciplined, dull, and almost invisible. That's why it works. Most people who reach retirement think the hard part is over. They imagine their money will behave simply because they've stopped working. But money doesn't calm down when you retire, you must. A person can have $250,000 saved, but if their monthly spending is reckless, the number becomes meaningless. The real danger isn't a market crash, it's a lifestyle that burns faster than your portfolio can grow. A retiree with modest spending will always outrun a retiree with oversized habits, no matter how big the initial nest egg is. The truth that no one says out loud is that retirement is won in your monthly expenses, not your total savings. You don't need to live miserably, but you do need to live intentionally. Every dollar you protect is a dollar that compounds. Every unnecessary bill is a hole in the bucket. People think wealth disappears because of bad investments, and yes, sometimes it does, but far more often it disappears through slow leaking. A subscription here, a luxury there, a habit you don't question. You look up 10 years later and wonder where it all went. Then there is the silent killer of retirements, boredom disguised as spending. People leave work and suddenly feel an emptiness they try to fill with purchases. They chase entertainment because they no longer chase purpose. But money is a poor substitute for meaning. When you don't know what to do with your time, you start finding things to do with your wallet. The happiest retirees aren't the ones with the most toys. They're the ones who never let their identity depend on consumption. Another thing people underestimate is inflation, not in the newspaper sense, but in the personal sense. Your tastes inflate, your expectations inflate. The longer you have free time, the more you want comfort instead of discipline. And comfort is expensive. A retiree who upgrades their lifestyle every time they feel a little restless will burn through $250K faster than any market downturn could ever manage. The only hedge against this is self-awareness, knowing the difference between what improves life and what just distracts you from it. There's also the issue of fear, the kind that makes people hoard cash because they don't trust themselves or the market. Cash feels safe, but it's a slow erosion. Every year, inflation trims a little off the top. You don't notice it until suddenly your safe pile has lost a decade of buying power. Safety isn't about hiding your money. It's about placing it where it quietly works even while you sleep. And then there's the opposite problem, the retiree who tries to make up for lost time. They think they're behind, so they feel compelled to chase returns they should have been chasing in their 20s, not their 60s. They jump into hot stocks, speculative stories, complicated products they barely understand, all because they're scared of standing still. But standing still is often the smartest thing you can do. Fast decisions in retirement are almost always expensive ones. A peaceful retirement requires something most people never practice: restraint, the ability to separate wants from impulses, the discipline to say no to things you can technically afford but don't need, the patience to let your savings grow slowly instead of anxiously trying to force miracles. When you control your spending, you control your future. The market can fluctuate, but your discipline doesn't have to. A retiree with moderate habits and calm thinking will outlive their money, not the other way around. At some point in retirement, you stop caring about beating the market and start caring about not being beaten by life. The older you get, the more you realize your real assets were never the numbers on a page. They were your habits, your peace, and your decisions. A person with $250,000 who behaves wisely will always live better than someone with $2 million who behaves foolishly. People don't go broke because the market betrayed them. They go broke because they betray themselves through impatience, envy, or stubbornness. The truth every retiree eventually discovers is that simplicity is not just comforting, it's profitable. Complicated investments drain your energy, confuse your judgment, and make you vulnerable to salespeople who speak confidently but know nothing. A simple retirement portfolio kept consistent for years will outperform a retiree who jumps from one opportunity to the next. Complexity sells because it feels prestigious. Simplicity builds because it actually works. By this stage of life, your most important tool is not cleverness, it's clarity. Clarity about what actually matters. Clarity about what you want your remaining years to feel like. When people don't have clarity, they start reinventing themselves financially every few months. They question everything, they chase trends, they get scared, then greedy, then tired. Their money never has enough time to settle into anything meaningful, but the retiree who chooses a strategy and respects it will always come out ahead. Another truth: you don't need to obsess over growing your pile. You need to become a master at sustaining it. Even a modest nest egg can last decades if you view it as a partner rather than a prize, but it can disappear in 5 years if you treat it like fuel for entertainment. Your savings are not a trophy, they're a tool, and tools require care, not excitement. Most retirees underestimate how powerful consistency is. Not dramatic changes, not heroic decisions, just steady behavior. Spending slightly less than you think you can, investing slightly more conservatively than your ego wants, ignoring noise that claims to be urgent. Those small choices add up to the ultimate luxury, not having to worry. And here's something every retiree needs to hear: you do not need to beat the young. You do not need to chase the same opportunities you missed decades ago. Your financial race is no longer about speed, it's about endurance. Young people can recover from mistakes. You recover by avoiding them. There's honor in that, far more than people realize. The retirees who sleep peacefully at night aren't the ones with the biggest accounts. They're the ones who designed a life that doesn't scare them. They built a structure, they set boundaries. They resisted temptations that offered thrills but demanded risk they could no longer afford. They learned that real independence doesn't come from multiplying your money, it comes from mastering your reactions. If you can reach a point where your savings are protected, your spending is intentional, and your investments quietly grow without constant supervision, you've already won. You have something half the world never finds: enough. Not the loud, flashy kind of enough that tries to impress people, but the deep, quiet enough that lets you live your life without fear gnawing at your ribs. And that truly is the whole point of retiring well. You've lived long enough to know that life isn't a straight line. You've seen seasons of abundance, seasons of loss, seasons of confusion, and seasons where you surprised even yourself with how strong you were. So if you're listening to this now, understand something very simple. You've already won more battles than you give yourself credit for. People your age carry a quiet strength the world doesn't talk about anymore. Younger generations try to replace wisdom with confidence, noise, and urgency. But you know better. You know that steady hands build more than fast ones. You know that patience outlives panic. You know that most of the things people chase end up meaning very little in the end. So if you're sitting there with $250,000 saved or even less, don't underestimate what that represents. That's discipline. That's sacrifice. That's decades of choosing responsibility over impulse. That's the story of someone who showed up for their life again and again, even when it wasn't easy. Don't let the world shame you into thinking it's not enough. It's more than many ever manage, and it's certainly enough to build a peaceful, dignified life if you use it well. And here's the part most people forget. You are entering a season where the best returns aren't financial, they're emotional. The return on a slow morning, the return on laughing with someone you love, the return on walking without rushing, the return on knowing you don't have to prove anything anymore. That's a kind of wealth money can't imitate. Your goal now isn't to chase everything you didn't do before. Your goal is to protect what matters and let your years work for you instead of against you. If your money grows slowly and your stress shrinks quickly, you're on the right path. If your days feel lighter than they used to, you're winning. If you've learned to ignore the noise, the fear-mongering headlines, the flashy investment schemes, the pressure to keep up, then you're wiser than most people half your age. You've reached a point in life where the scoreboard is no longer measured in dollars, but in calm, in clarity, in the quality of the hours you have left. And the truth is, you've already done the heavy lifting. Now you get to enjoy the part of life that's supposed to feel spacious, not rushed, peaceful, not pressured, simple, not chaotic. Let yourself appreciate the fact that you made it here. A lot of people don't. A lot of people spent their whole lives working just as hard, only to miss the chance to rest in what they built. But you're here, you're listening, you're thinking clearly, you're taking the right steps, and that alone means you're far ahead. If you build your retirement on wisdom instead of worry, on discipline instead of drama, and on enough instead of never enough, you'll live these years exactly the way they were meant to be lived, comfortably, calmly, and completely on your terms. You've done well. You've earned this peace. Now enjoy it without apology.